Thank you, Nigel. Losing guests. Music has always been, well, not always, but it's been a part of my life. I started off in my early days, I was singing supercalifragilisticexpialidocious for the best of them. And I enjoyed it, but I never experienced music from a popular culture standpoint. I never listened to the radio when I was a kid. Well, when I did, it was the local radio station featured a lot of country music with steel guitars. It really wasn't my cup of tea at the time. So at Halloween, a turning point for me was at Halloween. I went to a door and it turned out to be the music teacher from my local school. And I said, trick or treat, and she said, treat. I was like, I hate it when teachers do this. And she said, sing us a song. I said, I don't like music. And she said, what do you mean you don't like music? And music is so important. And I can't remember the exact words she really went on about. But I think that was kind of a turning point for me. And perhaps it's just that I was at that right age. I was about to break into my teenage years. Yes, I like to trick or treat well into my early teenage years. Got a lot of candy as well. That's another story. I started to listen to music at any rate, and I think that was the turning point. So I tuned into the top 3 at 9 p.m. in the early 80s, and I was at a radio station at a city about 200k away from my hometown in Dawson Creek. It was the only place I could hear decent popular music at the time. And Culture Club's Karma Chameleon was the #1 track for about 6 months in a row, so I got my fill. And that was really the start of me in 80s music. And I really enjoyed it, and I immersed myself in that culture. And I found that music was a great way of socializing with stuff. You had something to talk about with other people. And it was something that also I found helped me become the soundtrack of my life, which I think is a common thing that people say. I, for example, sat down and read a Stephen King novel, and it was Salem's Lot. And at the time, I was listening to a Heart album, and I must have played that Heart album about 20 times, and I swear it was the perfect soundtrack for that novel, which was about vampires. Everything except maybe one track just called The Wolf, which obviously was a different Stephen King novel. But apart from that, it was the perfect thing. And now whenever I think of the book, I think of the music. Whenever I hear a song from that album, I just am immediately drawn back to that point in my life. And that's something that I enjoy. Going on beyond that, anytime I hear a song from the 80s, I can think back to what I was doing, what was going on in my life at that time. I love to play games with my friends at pubs. It's like, tell me the artist and the year that song was out. And apart from the fact the hate that I always win, I just, again, it brings me back and gives me some sort of grounding. I also found that music was wonderful when I came to Australia in the late 80s. I suddenly found a whole series of artists that I'd never heard before. And I think it's interesting to come in from an outsider and experience the likes of, please excuse me if I mention artists that don't match your particular tastes, but Cold Chisel and Dragon and Australian Crawl. They actually had a lot going on. When you come in and you view what they've done in terms of 2 or 3 albums, it's like amazing. And I really enjoyed that. And that became a part of my socialization into Australia. I was able to talk to people about their music, as well, of course, as AC/DC, which I just immersed myself in. I only found out the other day, actually, interestingly enough. I always used to think that with short hair I couldn't really headbang, and I'd go to concerts, I'd go doing like this, and come out the next day with a really stiff neck, actually for the next week or so. I thought, well, the long-haired people have it easy, because they can just go gym and hair just go. I talked to a girl at work the other day, who's also an 80s child. She had the long hair, and she just casually mentioned how, yeah, she used to get the stiffest necks at concert, and I went, yes! It wasn't just me. Anyway, the other thing that I really like about music, apart from the socialization factor, is the way that it can actually inform. You can find an album and suddenly it's just not music, it's actually trying to get a message across. And I've had that happen on a number of occasions. I'd like to share a couple with you tonight. The first occasion was with, let me see if I can remember this. It was at university, and a friend of mine, I didn't actually know him that well, I just by way of making conversation, I said, well, what's your favorite band? And he said, Public Enemy. Now this, I don't know if you know the band, but this guy was not a black man in Detroit. He was, actually, he was a Greek guy at City University. And for him to say Public Enemy was quite outlandish. I didn't really know the band, but I thought that's really odd. But considering I was young and carefree, I think I bought 100 albums that year. One of them, a couple of them, became Public Enemy albums. And I was introduced to the form of trying to inform and trying to raise awareness through music. The song I couldn't think of in particular was By the Time I Get to Arizona, which was a message about why the hell is Arizona the only state in the United States that doesn't recognize Martin Luther King's birthday. Everybody else sees fit to honor that man, except the state of Arizona, which just was, eh. And I thought that was a very powerful message, and it really informed me about the Black rights movement, which is an ongoing thing. Another album that came to my attention recently, while I was back in Canada a few years ago, is an album by the Drive-By Truckers. They do Southern bluegrass music, and they had a double album that talked about the life and times of Lynyrd Skynyrd. Seems like a very odd concept, but they talked about how Lynyrd Skynyrd's song Sweet Home Alabama, which everybody knows is a good time rockin' tune, was actually a riposte to Neil Young and his song Southern Man, which is really a slap down to the whole South. So Lynyrd Skynyrd come up and they give this good time song, We Don't Need a Southern Man Anyhow, talking about Neil Young. But they also mention in this that it wasn't as easy as this. It wasn't just a war against these artists. And Neil Young actually was one of the pallbearers at the funeral of the lead singer of Lynyrd Skynyrd when he died in a plane crash. Another song from the same album talks about the race wars that went on in Alabama through the 60s and early 70s with the governor, George Wallace, and how he played for popularity, viewing what was going on with race. And it just finishes with a refrain, which I'd like to finish with tonight. Put another log in the fire, boys, because George Wallace is coming to hell.